Good morning. Yes, it's hard to believe that river out the front was the raging torrent that it was just over 12 months ago, isn't it? How do I get my presentation up here? That's not it. Okay, so I don't see it here. Okay. Right, so I'm going to be doing this bit, sorry. This morning I'll just talk to you about the way that Queensland Police Service, for the first time last year, really used social media as a part of our emergency response messaging to the community. We'd been going on social media for around about 6 months by the time the floods had really kicked into gear in Queensland. If it had have happened 6 months prior, we would have done what we always did. I would have sat in on meetings with the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner and the Premier and all of the relevant ministers. I would have taken notes, I would have walked out of the room, got someone to draft a media release, and then spent the rest of the day chasing the people that I'd just been sitting in the room with, trying to get clearance on a media release about public safety information. It was an incredibly frustrating process for my team, who were trying to get information out in a hurry, to try and get that clearance process from people who are a little bit busy actually running a disaster. So for the first time last year, we did things a little differently, and it wasn't because we had a policy in place. We still don't have that policy signed off. It was because we were dealing with this situation. This photograph was taken on January 10 in the Lockyer Valley. It was taken because, in living memory, no one had ever seen water sit on that paddock. It was the first time it had ever flooded. So the owner raced up the hill and took a photograph. He took this one 11 minutes later. And then he took this one 22 minutes later. 18 minutes later. And then 22 minutes later. If you can imagine the difficulty for the Queensland Police Service and other first responders to try and get situational awareness, to work out where we needed our people, who needed help, what was going on when you're dealing with that sort of dynamic environment in 22 minutes. When I'm asked, why did I do it when I didn't have a policy signed off, I said, well, I'd either be explaining why I did it without a policy, or I might be standing up in front of a coroner and saying, I might have been able to do more to get information out to the people of Queensland, but I didn't have a policy in place. So that's sort of the environment that we were working in police media. So, as I say, about May the year before last, I kicked off the Facebook page. I actually started it off my own private page, and I let it sit there for about 3 weeks before I actually told anyone it existed, because it scared the hell out of me. You hear all the horror stories about social media and trolling and it being out of control and that horrible thing called feedback from the community. But the reason that I pressed go on that page was you just had to look at the impact on social media in reporting in times of disasters in the past 5 years. Look at the way the Mumbai bombing was reported. For the first 2 hours, the only information on mainstream media was what was being said on Twitter, because it takes mainstream media time to get in place and set up and reporting. So in that really crucial first couple of hours, they're looking for information, and they just run Twitter feeds, because that's what happens. The last Jakarta bombing, I think the first tweet appeared 12 seconds after the bomb went off. For an emergency service responsible for getting public safety information out, that first couple of hours is just so crucial. But until January last year, there was no official voice in the social media sphere. You might say that Twitter's not that important. Twitter's important in Australia in particular, because media increasingly use it as a significant source of information, and they will run information directly from Twitter in times of crisis. So we saw that it was really important that we, as the police service, were in that space providing official information, providing good public safety messages in those first critical hours. So that was sort of the impetus for me starting the page and going up to the Deputy Commissioner going, hey, you do want to sign this off? We've got a Facebook page. Luckily, he saw the benefits in it as well. 6 months later, he was became the first state disaster coordinator, so he quickly learned the benefits of it firsthand. So this is our growth in the first 6 months of the Facebook page. We were really happy with this growth. It's a nice healthy little increase there. That was just word of mouth. We did no advertising. We didn't say anything publicly about it. It was just there, and people found it and they shared it with their friends. And you know, we were pretty happy. Beginning of December 2010, we reached a significant milestone for us. We got more friends than the Courier Mail. Everybody needs a goal. So we were pretty happy with ourselves. We had 6,500 likes, and we thought we were going great guns. Then a few things happened in quick succession at the end of that year. November 1, the new Queensland Disaster Management Act was signed off, and that new Disaster Management Act was based on the lessons learned from the Victoria bushfires, which said that you need a really clear line of responsibility in times of disasters. And hey, Queensland Police, in times of disaster, you're the lead agency. So that was a significant change for us. While we've always been a major player, we weren't the lead agency in times of disaster up until that point. So that put a whole new emphasis on not only the way the QPS performs in times of emergency, but how we communicate in times of emergency. And then, of course, December 25, Cyclone Tasha. Little Cyclone Tasha, Category 1, she kicked the whole thing off. She crossed the coast up in central Queensland on Christmas Day. Wasn't much of a cyclone, but she had a huge tail of rain which swept down through the state, progressively causing flooding as she went along. And as you can see, what happens to our growth there, as more and more people became impacted by the floods, they started to come to us looking for information. It was around about that time that I was sitting in a state disaster coordination meeting, and I was hearing all this information that I knew would never make mainstream media because it was just too low level. But if it was directly affecting you, it was going to be really important. So I was sitting at the back of the room and I just started to tweet some of the information. Road closures here, flood levels there, resupply to this community. Nothing big level, nothing that, the Premier might have wanted to speak about. I then would go into her press conferences and live tweet those as well. And I did it for a couple of days, and I didn't have a chance. I mean, we were running 18, 20, 22-hour days, so I didn't have a chance to talk to anyone about it. And I figured that someone would eventually twig, and I'd either get a smack upside the ear or carry on. And after about 3 days, the Premier started to look to me and say, tweet it. Okay. And that was, we're incredibly lucky in that she really understands social media and very quickly grasped that it was helping people. So I started to live tweet. The mainstream media, we were using our Facebook page because our officers in times of emergency, they don't have time to be talking to 18 or 20 different journalists on the phone. We're flat out getting a hold of them. So what I started to do was give us a call, we'll record what you've got to say, and then we'll feed it out to the media. That way you've got to make one phone call while you're standing up to your knees in water, directing traffic or whatever. So we started to do that, and then we started to refer the mainstream media to our Facebook page. Look for the latest information, go to the Facebook page, here's our Twitter feed. Very quickly the mainstream media started to refer the public to our page. So what we thought was a pretty healthy little growth suddenly started to go through the roof. And as you can see, by the time we got to the beginning of January, we were up about 16,500, 17,000 likes, which was really quite an amazing growth for us. And obviously during that time we had a whole range of things going on in Queensland. Then January 10 hit us. I was flooded in at home that day, so I was working on my trusty iPad. And when we started to become aware, I was actually on the phone to the Assistant Commissioner in Toowoomba. At the time, the flash flooding was going on, and at that stage he had no idea. All he knew was that it was raining like he had never seen rain in his life. And he actually commented to me, "You would not believe how much it's raining here." And within a series of minutes, things just unfolded incredibly quickly, to the point that I got a phone call from one of his staff saying, "Tell people to get out of the Lockyer Valley now." And this reflects that 24-hour period. Obviously, it was not only what happened in Lockyer Valley, it was also the 24-hour period that we became aware that Ipswich and Brisbane were going to have significant flooding because that rain event over January 10 was just so significant. So we had not only everyone wanting to know what was going on in the Lockyer, we had all the people of Brisbane and Ipswich trying to find out information about how it was going to affect them. In that 24-hour period, we had 39 million story views on our Facebook page. That's one every 450 hits on our page every second over a 24-hour period. That was one of the major learnings for us, is in times of crisis, don't rely on your website, because if that had happened to our website, it might be up and running again now, but not sure. You know, and it wouldn't have just affected our external website, it would have affected our operational systems as well. As it was, Facebook didn't even blink. It just, I mean, we're small fry in Facebook world. I think Lady Gaga's got 22 million fans at the moment. So that's, you know, as you can see, just massive amounts of hits on the page, people looking for information, realising that they were able to get that information that they're not getting from mainstream media, because mainstream media just can't get that volume of information out there. On average, we were updating our page every 10 minutes. And basically that was just little tweets of information, which was also on our Twitter feed. After that event, I heard Steve Austin on ABC Radio describe it as radio gold, because obviously they were running 24-hour coverage and it just provided them constant little snippets of information to provide. That's another major learning for us. Social media is not an end audience. This is not talking to people who aren't talking back. This isn't, you are talking to people who want to share your information. They want to be a part of the information flow. They want to talk back to you. They want to share it with their friends. It's not social media versus mainstream media. So mainstream media rely on social media increasingly to do their job, because they weren't sitting in the newsrooms waiting for a press release to come through from police media. They were stuck in floodwaters as well. So they were keeping an eye on us on their mobile phones, and they actually really appreciated that information as well, because it provided them with situational awareness. So this is the timeline again. And then we had that little week off, and then Cyclone Yasi came over the horizon. Yay, Cyclone Yasi. And we can see there we had another little bump of growth. Another learning for us out of this was social media works if you get social media or if you don't get social media. Social media works if you have power or if you don't have power. I often say that disaster management is a story of the old, or disaster communication is a story of the old and the new. It didn't matter if you were sitting in your walk-in wardrobe with your golden retriever and your 2 kids, watching a live stream press conference from the Premier talking about the fact that the cyclone's going right over your house at the moment, or if you're sitting in there with battery-operated radio, you were hearing our Twitter feed. It just provides another way of getting that information out there. And the number of people who said they were sitting in their closets watching a live stream press conference of the Premier was quite remarkable. That was another learning for us. Around about 60% of people say that they actually have a battery-operated radio in their house, even though everyone should have one. There are more mobile phones in Australia than there are people. And increasingly, they are internet-abled. Increasingly, people are using them to access the internet. I'll talk in a little minute about Queensland Alert and how we use that this year. The statistics show us around about 70% of people who hit that page hit it off a mobile phone. They didn't hit it off a laptop or a desktop. So, and this graph actually represents our growth since the cyclones and the floods, and that was another real learning for us. We thought that once the disaster was over, everyone would unlike us. Who wants to be friends with police? It turns out over 270,000 people and rising. I mean, we've had 13,500 likes this month. People appreciate us as a point of truth. They appreciate us as the information directly from the source. And they love helping us out. They love telling us, helping us find missing people. They love giving us information about car crashes. They love spreading information about a crime to try and catch someone. We'll put out a request for information in relation to a crime, and someone will find their Facebook page just like that. Hey, this is that guy. They love being a part of that. Everyone thinks that Everyone thinks they're a bit of a detective and they really appreciate being a part of policing. I noticed it's Harmony Day today, and I was just looking before I came, the seventh Peelian principle of policing is the police are the public and the public are the police. And this has really reconnected us in a new way with the people of Queensland. Actually, enabled them to be a part of our world, to see a little bit more of the way that we actually operate and actually feel like they're a part of something. We have started recently to use it as a trial in Metro South to try and find stolen cars. And we have people saying that every morning they print off the list and give it to their kids in the back seat. Hey, it's a new twist on the old find the number plate. Yeah, it's wonderful. So, people really do enjoy that. I mean, this is the way we were using the page during the floods. And you can see we had the live stream press conferences with the wonderful people there from Deaf Queensland. They were just fabulous, the interpreters. We were doing road closure information. And the interesting thing about that was it was crowdsourcing information, because by the time we get official information on a road closure, things are so dynamic in times of flooding that we would have someone jump on and go, I'm at that road, and they've actually just reopened it, or they found us another route or whatever. So people were actually providing each other information on the page, information that we couldn't keep up with officially, so we would just let them go and then try and check it up, and if it was true, we would then repost it. But it was really interesting the way that people used it as a place to crowdsource information. We at one point realised that when Cyclone Yasi was heading in, that there was a massive contingent of Chinese tourists in Cairns had just arrived the day before. And we're like, oh, I wonder if anyone's told them about the cyclone. So we put out a call on Twitter for some volunteer translators. And we had professional translators from around the world provide us with translations from the live stream press conferences, sometimes in languages that were incredibly, probably minor community members in Australia, but they just wanted to help. And that was the thing that we really noticed, is social media enables, it actually engages that desire to help and be a part of something. So this season, whereas 2011, we were really the only official voice in social media. So we sort of became a bit of a clearinghouse for lots of other government agencies, local councils, electricity companies, that sort of thing, just to get information out there. In the 12 months since, a lot of those have also stepped into social media. There's lots of government agencies in social media now. Most of the local councils have a social media presence. And we were a little bit concerned coming up to this storm season that people wouldn't know where to go for that information. Especially say if you're a tourist to Queensland, you wouldn't even know what council area you're in. So this was our response to that. This is Queensland Alert. And basically what we did, it's a drop and drag page where we can grab information anywhere on the internet and just put it on the page. So that all you have to do is go to Queensland Alert and you can find information on road closures, council information, whether your school's open or closed, how to find the ABC radio in your area. Just basically a one-stop shop for people, so they didn't have to go searching in a whole lot of different areas that they may not know where to look. And it actually worked quite well. Interestingly, South Australian Government has just recently launched a very similar product after hearing about our product, and it did work very well. It didn't matter if you're not on Facebook, you'll see Facebook feeds. It doesn't matter if you're not on Twitter, you'll see Twitter feeds. So it's sort of just a nice little amplifier of everyone else's information in one spot. And we're hoping to do a lot more work on that in coming weeks. So I'm actually getting a designer in for a couple of weeks to make it a little bit more beautiful, a little bit less cluttered. So I guess the other thing I would mention about our use of social media is we're also moving into more using it to help our local police engage with their local communities. We're starting to kick off blogs for different districts. Any of you who live at Dutton Park and Wollongabba, those sort of areas, Dutton Park Police were first off the rank, and they're really enjoying having their blog talking to you about neighbourhood issues and that sort of thing. And in coming weeks there's going to be quite a few more blogs roll out through the QPS including the stock squad, which I think is great. You know, they're based at Charlton, but they've realised that the geographic spread of farmers in really remote areas, this is a way to enable them to talk to them. So it's really nice the way different parts of the QPS are sort of realising the benefits of stepping into this space. Now, I'll probably finish up there. Do we take question and answers now, Rolly, or? No? Okay, lovely.